As a way of welcome, my name is Justin Fredrickson. I am the Director of Cloud Native Architects here at Portworx. And joining me today is John Owings, who is our Director of Strategy here at Portworx. And we're super excited to recap our last week in Chicago. This is our KubeCon digest, and we're going to be discussing some of the emerging trends and our takeaways from this year's conference. And just a couple elements of housekeeping. We're going to go through our content, but if you guys have questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A, and we will cover them at the end of the session. And we'd love to hear from you around what your questions are, since it was an action-packed week, and we're likely not going to be able to cover every single thing that transpired there, but we certainly did see and got exposed to a lot, and we can certainly ask or answer some of those questions as they come up. Why don't we get right to it? J.O. Yes, exactly. What were your impressions of the event? What did you think? How was it?
It was leaps and bounds above the previous one. I feel like everyone was a lot more engaging. There were obviously, I feel like, a lot more people.
Attendance was up almost double. So last year was 7,500 people roughly. This year was right around 15,000 attendees. The other thing that I noticed was that it's still very much an open source conference, which is great. That's what makes KubeCon so special compared to, like, say, going to Oracle Open World or an AWS event. This is very much geared towards the open source community. That being said, because of the size, I felt like there was a lot more vendors there, and we saw it in terms of our own booth. From a vendor engagement perspective, last year we scanned about 3.5% of the total attendees of 7,500, and this year we scanned nearly 10% of the attendees. So much more traffic in the booths, and a lot of customers, from my perspective, looked like they were really looking for solutions to complex issues that they started to encounter in the last year as they started to move into production. Versus last year, there seemed to be a little bit more research around how to get from point A to point B, and maybe a little bit more focus on observability and things of that nature. Whereas this year, just seemed a little bit more oriented towards production. The other thing that I just noticed as customers came up to me at times is that it just seems like very much the future is hybrid for a lot of these companies. I got a lot of customers coming up to me saying, "Hey, I got two different clouds. How can you help me?" And that was interesting to see. But
one thing is, I feel like the buzz is more like the early VMworld days. For anyone out there that went to those early VMworld, like, people are excited to learn and use the technology, which is a good thing. We're going to the right spot. And boom, right? I said, hey, how many mentions of these certain terms, and exclude cloud native, because I think everyone had the word cloud native in their session descriptions. So, and here it is, right? We have over 300 on AI. Now, this is obviously generated by AI, so it may be biased, but I don't think it made this up. But yeah, so what I think I've noticed mostly in the previous years was security and CI/CD development, that type of stuff, and then community things would be top. And this year, like, this is a huge shoot up of how to leverage AI. And you can see it right here. I think all these sessions there. Now, this is not like, so I'll correct the chart here, J. Fred.
Yeah.
These are mentions, right? Not sessions. So there weren't like 1,500 sessions. There was more like 400 sessions.
Got it.
So yeah, just to correct everyone and know that, like, I don't just completely blindly trust ChatGPT to tell me the truth. So there you go.
Good point. So what do you think the implications are for these two data points? I mean, as a vendor, I can certainly see AI and data. That seems awfully appealing for a vendor in our space where we're providing storage solutions. But do you think this accurately represents kind of the buzz and the concerns and focuses for those data platform engineers that are out there?
So, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that it was a buzzword. I'm sure that's what helped get a lot of people's sessions into consideration. It stood out. It's an interesting topic. People want to learn about it. But I think more so is the enterprises want to figure out how it applies to them and how to run it on premises, right? Like, they don't want they don't necessarily want to run like a proprietary model that is locked away and they just send their data to it. They're trying to figure out a way, how do I get the same benefits, but not, not share my data with my competitors, right? And there's still a lot of mistrust in the out there in the industry. So, that I would say that was probably one of the top things is people are interested in it. They want to know how to run it, but they want to know how to do it in a way that, is open, but their data doesn't leave their walls. Even if those are cloud walls, that, it could be public cloud, but they don't want it just off with some other vendor. There's at this audience, this is the people that want to build it themselves, right? Like there's one commonality amongst, the attendees is like they're there to learn how to build things, right? They're the builders. They're not the sales managers.
Maybe there's an element here, one of the key things that I kept hearing from customers is that, Kubernetes is by no means a science project anymore. It is firmly established, and many folks were even talking about, well, is Kubernetes having its Linux moment where it's just accepted and just part of everything? But maybe AI will help turn the corner, so to speak, in terms of driving easier transitions to be more secure.
What other impressions do you see out there? So like we're talking about AI, let's kind of move to the next thing, which is,
Sure.
What other impressions did you have out there?
Yeah, so I definitely saw some more trends emerge around this theme of best practices in particular. Some referred to it as gold paths or the paved road, so to speak. And that kind of lines up with some of the sessions that I saw. Like, for example, there was a Boeing employee that did a session called "Clean Up on Isle Cloud," and addressing the complexities of just navigating, well, which storage architecture should I use to drive the best cost efficiency, performance, scale, and whatever it might be needed. In our own sessions as well, we had our good friend Satish from Ford get up and talk again on the Cube, which was great. And he talked about how what's key in this moment, and maybe this explains why the Solutions Pavilion and the Vendor Expo was so populated and so full of energy, is that people are looking for ways to combine different technologies to allow the platform to do exactly what they need to do, as opposed to just tinkering around and exploring what they want to do. Now there's a very clear vision of what they want, and so they need the security vendors, they need the automated deployment vendors, they need storage vendors like Portworx and Pure Storage. And that was just an interesting takeaway that I had. Gartner too also referenced this as a key consideration as they move forward, is this notion of finding a defined best practice for maybe an environment running a data pipeline for an AI use case, or a site reliability engineering group running a specific way in order to drive their Elastic or Splunk use cases. So I see a little bit more maturation in that regard, so I thought that was interesting. Tell me a little bit about just kind of the conference as a whole. Like, did you feel like, obviously there was 15,000 people, new venue in Chicago, different layouts. What were your thoughts around, just the conference as a whole, the whole kind of environment as we were enjoying it last week?
This was like back when I went to Seattle, I was in Austin in previous years, and San Diego, which were all excellent shows, and this is back on par with that.
It just seems like this conference is marching, quicker and quicker towards being one of the largest conferences that people attend in a given year. And I don't know, I guess I'm talking myself into the notion that Kubernetes really is having its Linux moment. Sometimes I vacillate back and forth on that, but just the energy and the buzz overall. The other thing I did notice too is that, look, I go to a lot of conferences, and I'm going to go to Vegas in the next few weeks for a variety of conferences, and I would say that the population of attendees is relatively younger than what I see at those other conferences, and maybe that's a reflection too of the emerging status and of this particular technology and platform.
Yeah, and I think the thing that everyone is the workloads are more mission critical too. So they care, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a science project. It's not just a lab. They're running their business on it, right? We have customers doing that we talk to every day. They're running their business on it, but not to say that we're representative of the entire world, but like, hey, there are a lot of customers out there that we've never met that are running very important things, and so it's key to them to make sure it's secure, it's up, all the things that you're doing with Kubernetes in those environments.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. In my conversations with customers as they came by, the tenor of their conversations was far more different. Last year in Detroit, there was a lot of questions. I kind of alluded to it earlier in the talk track here. There were a lot of questions that were research based, whereas I had more people coming to the booth saying, "Hey, my partner told me they should come and talk to Portworx for its enterprise reliability and purpose-built software-defined storage for Kubernetes that can do multi-cloud." They came prepared with why they wanted to spend time at my booth versus, hey, this looks like a nice shiny booth. Maybe I should talk to these people. Maybe their things are interesting at their booth. People always are excited to pick up the tchotchkes from the booth, but there was less focus on tchotchkes from my perspective, and more.
We were baking fresh cookies though too, so that'll attract people. But
yeah,
and I think that goes to show like why like Murli and Satish were talking about golden paths, and like
right.
people are looking for kind of an approved way. I call it, I call them best practices still. Maybe that's the old way to refer to them. But you know
Yeah,
what I mean? They're looking for a way to navigate this that they know will work. Like it's no longer I'm here to experiment. It's like, hey, show me how to put it together and how to work. And so some of the interesting sessions I saw were the ones where certain companies like Datadog went through. Here's why we went down last summer, right? And they went through the basically the RCA of how they broke. Right.
and we seem to have a little bit of time, so maybe we could expound a little bit further around what do you see as the main challenges around trying to adopt AI as such a strong focus of what what platform engineers are trying to accomplish in Kubernetes. From my perspective, Kubernetes precedes so much of what was developed for AI, ChatGPT, and the things that are happening in AI. That's a very recent development. Whereas if you think about how Kubernetes came into development, it was largely for web-based utilization. So where do you see the challenges as AI starts to inject itself into a common conversation from Kubernetes as a whole?
So I think there's it's a two-pronged approach, right? There's how do we train models, and not everyone's going to do that, right? Like how do I create my own chat GPT? Like not everyone's going to do that. There's models out there that are already made, like you can use them. So
Right.
what the challenge to the platform engineer is like, how do I get that model in the hand of my developers so they can make value out of it, right?
Right.
And so what we see is ways for it to be easier and easier, like the demo on stage around a project called Olama. If anyone wants to look that up, right? It's a way to run it on your Mac. Sorry, Windows users, it runs on Linux and Mac only. So I'm glad that the world is moving to the right direction. And sorry, no offense to my Microsoft friends, but the the thing is that you have you have the ability to run it right there inside of Minikube on your desktop, right? Now, maybe not everyone wants to do that. Like I'm very picky about what I let just run on my laptop because I do webinars and stuff, and if process kicks off and it kills GoToMeeting, it looks bad, right? So,
Right.
so I run them in the cluster. So the challenge for the platform engineer, that has lots of customers out there that are, their internal customers, their developers that are using a platform that they've created, is how do I give them an option to use this model in a way with the data services that they already have every day. So if it's Kafka or Postgres or some of these other stateful services, like this is another stateful service that you can provide that has the data built. Does that and then make sure I get that right? Is you train a model, right, in AI, you have
Yeah.
this blob of files, and you use that to program against,
Right.
and you have to make that repeatable and reliable. So you can't just you don't want people recreating it every day. You want to be able to take that and put it in a place where, hey, I know it's going to be there. So a stateful, like we're more and more seeing, like we've been saying for years, this you're going to get the benefit of stateless with state now. That's what Portworx is all about. But we're not doing the sales pitch today. But is like I need to have that data available for them no matter where they when they spin this up.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I think that does actually, that makes a ton of sense in terms of if you're thinking about the mechanics of how AI functions. Stateful is table stakes. You have to be able to store elements of those data sets to go through, as you put it, the learning and training cycles. Inference doesn't get to happen out of thin air. It has to have something to operate against. The other thing that it resonated, at least for me, around so much focus on AI is that when you think about the application of it in a variety of use cases, that means that the data sets that need to be crunched might be distributed. They might be way out on the edge if it's a 5G network, or if it's a I had an interesting customer meeting a few weeks ago and an executive briefing, and I learned that there was a customer who is in the meat processing business, and they were using AI and GPUs in order to really ascertain what was the quality of a particular butcher's capabilities. And so the use cases are super vast, but their processing facilities are very distributed, and they're out at the edge. And so the challenge for them was to figure out, how do I move this data around, or how do I make it relevant to where I can put a more cost-effective GPU solution in place. Maybe that would be in the public cloud, maybe it's a centralized data center. So this element of data portability, I think Kubernetes can really help with when you have an architecture or ability like Portworx can provide, where you can kind of span across those. And even outside of just Portworx, that challenge still reflects itself out in the marketplace. So interesting elements around AI and how it transitions into Kubernetes as a whole.
I picture there being an internal developer platform where you will have the choice of models to be able to, you spin them up and they just come up, right? Like you're not retraining them. You're just like, hey, I need Llama, I need Mistral, or whatever. Some of the, and actually I went and looked it up. There's a gajillion of them now. Like, why should I ever have to train anything myself other than I don't trust anyone? But I probably would do it anyways. But like, wow, there's a lot of options out there, and so you could build around it and be ready to go.
100%.
And they all take a lot of data, and you don't want to copy them back and forth all the time. I'll tell you that much.
No, for sure. Well, the other big focus that we saw out of the mentions, not necessarily the sessions, but the mentions, was security. So I wanted to come back to that for a moment as well. Why do you see security as a continuation? It's been in the top of the session focuses for a couple years now. And where does security, why does it keep coming up to the top of the pile, so to speak, from your perspective?
I mean, it's almost like a softball. Like, why do we, it'll never go away.
Fair enough.
Right? The bad people will still do things to mess things up. Like, you have to protect your software supply chain, basically your software chain. You have to make sure that you can account for whatever happens to your code as it goes through that, and or else you just bad things happen, right? And you get people out there that are not, they do not have your best interest in mind, and so it's going to be a huge thing. And so protecting your own internal IP, and also what you can trust coming from the outside. Like, hey, I'm not recompiling Kubernetes on my own. I'm downloading it from from a vendor most of the time. And so, does it need to be scanned? Do all these container images, do I have, not so much that like, hey, I think that they have viruses or malware or backdoors built into them, but hey, I need to show that we scanned it, we have a set of audit on it, right? And I see that never going away. Like that should,
Excuse
the
me.
fact that it's been big in the last couple of years just shows like how far off we were in building security into everything we code around
Uh,
everywhere.
it's so true, actually, when you do think about how things are operating, there's two components. One is it's largely open source. So you're going to need to have some mechanism in place to go scan for critical vulnerabilities associated with open source projects. So that there's that component. And then there's, of course, I lost my train of thought there, unfortunately, but
Well, I could finish that thought, at least what I think your thought is
well, yeah,
that I had this happen to me earlier today. I ran a container and I'm like, okay, anyways, I have something that showed me where it's connecting to. Like it connects to a database, it connects to a web service, and then it also connects to an outside internet service. So I was like, why the heck is this thing dialing out, right? And so with open source, I start cracking open the code and going, what Python packages are in this? Where, what is it doing? And then finding the line where it's saying, it's, querying something off of an API, but I'm like, why is that in there, right? And so that's what everyone wants to do. And if you can, that's why they want it open source, but they also want it to be automated, right? Like me doing that, that's an hour of my time. I mean, we don't want, if you have 10,000 developers, you don't want them all doing that.
this does seem to reinforce yet again on the various aspects of running a platform is that we need to get to a place where it's easier for customers and individuals to find that best practice, to find, I keep coming back to the paved road or the golden path, but like
The yellow brick road. You're going to see the wizard.
yes, we're off to see the wizard. Maybe the industry will mature in this area as well to come along a common framework. But we've seen that in other parts of the technology space where to get GDPR certified or to have other certifications in the financial services industry, there's been defined paths around how do you reach that level of compliance to make that industry comfortable. And hopefully that's an evolution that we can start to see within this space as well, to establish that best practice and maybe even a practice in general. And maybe that's a good segue for us to talk about SIGs. I didn't see anything that caught my attention to solve these particular challenges that we talked about in both AI as well as security, but perhaps that'll be fodder for next year at the conference, and we'll see that emerge. But
no, there weren't a lot of like graduation announcements, right? Like I always call them, yeah, that's what they are, right? It's like, hey, it's gone from incubating to graduation, and I didn't see nothing caught my eye. If there was one, I actually did search to see if there was more. Nothing
right,
caught my eye. I feel like we are reaching a great stage where a big part of the ecosystem that comes from the CNCF is stable,
yeah,
which is awesome, right? Like they consider it stable, I consider it stable. It's good. And so whether you're using all those parts, like some of them do the same thing, they're different projects, but is that hey, you can put those things together, that they're stable and they work.
yeah. Well, if there's any contributors out there, perhaps we'll get some sandbox special interest groups next year that are trying to establish that best practice or that practice in general around security to help customers navigate these elements. It's certainly it's a stack that requires a lot of attention to detail because the various components need to be addressed as you move forward.
And one thing to add to that too is because it's stable, I'm still seeing, we still see a lot. So the other big topic that I had was observability. Like there's a lot of still like being able to log and then see what's going on, and which to me says there's still a lot of troubleshooting
Right.
happening in the world. So like while we say they're stable and they're you know they're doing great things, is there's still a lot of room for making it simple, easy to use when it comes to this space.
And I think I mentioned it earlier, but maybe that's where AI can really help us, is to get to a place where it can do that quality control and checking and implementation of good tooling around observation to drive it. Ultimately, those all feed into what I see as one of the themes still. It was a theme last year, driving Kubernetes towards enterprise and production use cases. And I think to your point, this year is maybe a lot about overcoming those observed challenges in productions, whereas last year it was a little bit more, hey, I'm still building this and I need to look for issues in order to make it scale. But now it seems much more practical versus the theoretical. And hopefully that aligns with what the customers were feeling and observing as well. Giving you a little more entree to talk about your conversations that you had with customers. What were some of the challenges that they brought to you when you were in the sessions and had one-on-ones with customers at the booth or in general?
So I had some very memorable conversations with some partners and some customers. So one, like when I say partners, like pure storage partners, that hey, they have people that are experts in these certain areas, and they were there at KubeCon because that's what they do. They do Kubernetes, and there's still a lot of learning that needs to happen around why we do what we do. Like, why do we put data in Kubernetes? Why we don't put it off in an external database? All those kind of things. And so while for you and I, like that's what we talk about all day, there's still a lot of people learning that, and you could see that too from some of the sessions where like they're like, yeah, we solved our data problem by using local paths, and I'm like, really? So when it fails over, it's gone, right? Like it's all inside the server on AWS, and I'm like, there's like 1,000 different ways to do that. And so I think there's still a lot of creativity out in the world around solving that issue when we can, kind of shortcut that path. There may be some pain that comes along with it, kind of like creating your own solution. So one of the things is, shortcutting that. For the Portworx customers I talked to, like, honestly, you know what? I got no stump. Like in the years past, I would get like the stump the chump questions, right? Like, what if this happens? What if this? What if my blocks are on these different servers and they do this? Like, I got none of that this year. What I got was, hey, we really love PDS, right? It's like, hey, we really love this. We love how this does this, and and then the second biggest compliment I got to other people was their CNAs. Like they would say, hey, I love this architect. I won't name him on the call, but like, it's like, we love this guy. He can do anything, he'll help us out. So like, I feel like there's a lot of happy, like, it makes me feel good that there's a lot of happy customers out there. And when I walk, even then, like the people that I met, which is cool, but then you walk through the venue and you see some of the sponsors and some of the other, software providers that like they have SaaS services, and you're like, oh, that, they're not public references. Like, that's one of our customers. That's one of our customers. And it's nice that like these people that are building great solutions.
Oh, right. Yeah, you were talking about like Mesmo was one of the sponsors, and they're
they're the Wi-Fi sponsor. So whenever you got on the Wi-Fi, it was like Mesmo by Mesmo Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in my booth conversations, maybe because I was wearing a sports jacket and kind of being managerial and whatnot, but there were definitely people who came up to me talking about cost optimization and how to, how can they better move forward now that they're moving into production to cost contain elements of their environment. And you mentioned Portworx Data Services, or PDS. We actually had a customer speak at our booth. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that customer and how they used PDS as something that was improving their overall delivery of services to their customers.
So yeah, they came in. I mean, obviously they're using PDS, but they're using it in their manufacturing floor, right?
Right.
And he came, basically, hey, we need to standardize the way that we deploy databases inside these Kubernetes clusters that are in these geodispersed, manufacturing facilities. Yeah. So Rivian, right? They make electric cars. It's awesome. But they have Kubernetes in every place, and they run PDS in order to standardize the way they roll out those databases and then manage the life cycle of them, down the road, whether it's backing them up, restoring them, doing those kind of things. So their real world experience means a ton to me as someone who's watched that product get launched and like seeing happy people use it and they're happy with it in production. That's an awesome thing, an awesome example, right? And it doesn't have to be like a 10,000 node cluster where you're running a a massive data workload, right? These are lots of like very specific workloads that they've built to monitor and watch and log things that are happening, that help them build more cars.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I know that cost was a big driver for them, but one of the things that I saw in my conversations was that there were customers that were not only concerned about cost, but they were also concerned about data mobility and the ability to use data services in different locations. So I had a couple customers that were using elements of OpenSearch, but maybe we're considering, hey, I'm using the data service because it's a managed service and I love it, but it's a little bit more expensive. And more importantly, I can't move that data around for different places to analyze it. And so I had numerous conversations talking with customers around, well, maybe I could just run OpenSearch, the open source version on top of EKS, and that would allow me to then move it out of the environment if I have Portworx running on top of EKS. That was a theme that I saw. But in general, multi-cloud seemed to be a real thing. And we've always talked about it, both in our parent company, Pure Storage, as well as in Portworx. But I feel like this push towards production utilization of Kubernetes is really driving that home. And we had Intuit, the individual from Intuit actually giving a presentation around how he transformed the RTO and RPO of their Jenkins environment by using Portworx to span across multiple availability zones. And that was a common theme as well, multi-cloud. And I thought that was really
the future is hybrid or multi-cloud.
That's right. Isn't that my quote? Did you just steal my quote? Just because?
No, I'm pretty sure I taught it to you.
Oh, fair enough.
No, I know. It's something we say so often. I don't know if it even means anything anymore.
Yeah, totally. Well, we have one customer that's actually running an AI solution. Did you want to talk about that one as well? I thought that was an interesting one.
So yeah, that was actually Era, right? And they're a AI platform, and they're running their solution on top of Portworx in order to allow their tenants to consume this product that they create that allows people to consume AI. So it was cool. They were at KubeCon, but then they were actually in a press release this week with Pure Storage and how they utilize Portworx. So that was pretty awesome.
Why don't we just talk a little bit about what do you see from the takeaway here around the future of Kubernetes and maybe potentially where do you think we fit in that equation and maybe there's synergy there. Hopefully there is. I mean, I want to be gainfully employed for the next several years. Yeah. So tell me what you think is the future.
What's that?
Get out your crystal ball.
Yes, the crystal ball. Like I see more bare metal Kubernetes on-prem. Like, yes, we're going to use a lot of cloud. There's scale and automation that we're never going to get, be able to just match when it comes to building on-prem. But right. I see a lot more people wanting, hey, I'm not going to do it today, but I eventually want this on bare metal because I want the performance. I want the, direct access into the CPUs. I don't need a hypervisor in the way. So I see a lot of push towards that, right? And then yes, we do, talk about KubeVirt a little bit, but I don't know if that is the majority of workloads 5 years from now, right? I see people wanting to build containers and make smart decisions about that. And going on to bare metal is going to be a way to be more efficient when it comes to those resources. Just what I'm seeing customers drive towards. Future wise, like I'm hoping too, there was actually, they were talking about a little bit in one of the keynotes, is an LTS version. They're going to have, like, if anyone's out there that's interested in it, they do release Kubernetes major versions like every 2 weeks. No, just kidding. It's like every 4 months, but it could really blur your mind. Like you get everything into production, and then 9 months later, you're 4 versions behind. That can be kind of frustrating. So they're having a survey or like a group to discuss and figure out like how they lock, kind of how some of the Linux distros are. Like, hey, this is the one we're going to support for 3 years. I know we're doing that with our Portworx releases. I think that's a great path forward, especially when you're in an enterprise and running on-prem. And even though we are building out better DevOps and platform engineering practices, like completely bouncing and rebuilding Kubernetes clusters every week might not fit in some of our customers. So stability and supportability, I think we're going to see more of in the next couple years.
I love it. That just means more people moving into production workloads. I think going along with that, and I keep hammering on it just because it just seems to be where my conversations gravitate. I think it dovetails with the AI conversation as well, is that what I loved about seeing in this space is that Kubernetes is literally everywhere. It's out at the edge, it's in point of sales, it's in that meat processing use case that I gave a description of, it's in warehouses, it's in data centers, and it's in the public cloud. And when you have so many different environments, it does definitely seem like it's begging for an ability for vendors to come in and really facilitate gluing those environments together. You can certainly do, manual exports and imports across disparate Kubernetes clusters and distros, but it's real challenging. And so I think that, the Portworx and the Red Hats of the world, we've got a good position in that marketplace to help address those particular challenges.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, the one thing I guess I'll close with this is that in many ways it seemed like we were in the middle of a lot of conversations around storage and what customers needed. And so when we walked down the aisles, it was like speed dating for alliances to some degree. There were so many people that we're working with in those aisles, and it's really exciting because we're all collaborating together to try and solve critical challenges for the space and for customers. And many of those startups on those aisles come out of SIGs and they graduate. And I just can't wait to see what the open source community is able to drive in this space. Because, though I articulated a little bit that it was more vendor driven, it's important to note that the vendors and the startups are coming out of an open source community. So, I heard one analyst say open source has won, and even though we had more vendors, I would 100% agree with that analyst. Open source is definitely what's driving this space and what's feeding